So when you think of a Lolita meetup, typically the first thing to come to mind is the Lolita Tea Party. I'm Royal Seeley, and I've been wearing the fashion since August of 2021, and not long after I hosted my first meet at an aquarium. The following month, I organized my first tea party, and since then, so for about the past year, I've hosted several more. And tea parties are by far one of the most fun events to have. It offers a chance for people to share a meal and connect over the love of Lolita fashion as well as yummy or cute foods. So today I want to talk about my process for organizing a Lolita tea party as well as what you can do as an attendee to make the process run a lot smoother. So the tea that we usually associate with the Lolita tea party meets is also referred to as afternoon tea. And that entails several savory small dishes like sandwiches, as well as several small desserts or sweets. Typically, it will be served alongside your choice of tea, and there may or may not be other little things that come along with it. It just depends on where you go. So that will bring us to our first point, the where. So if you're not familiar with what is in your area, the first thing you can do is do a search for afternoon tea near you. And when you're looking at these places, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind. You want to think about how far you as the host would be willing to travel, as well as what the accessibility options are. Is there parking on the street? Is there a reserved lot? Is there easy public transport to this location? These are all things to keep in mind while you are making your choice. Beyond that, you should see if they have a website or a menu available. This can help you when figuring out what kind of dietary options they may provide. So for example, in my I usually have to look for places that have vegetarian or vegan options, dairy-free or gluten-free options. And that's just a couple that I like to keep an eye out for. Something I've noticed is that these locations very rarely will put these on their website or in their menus. So oftentimes I have to call the location and check if there is an option. If you're someone that's nervous about making phone calls, hopefully this will make it a little bit easier. These places are very popular for weddings, anniversaries, retirement parties, birthdays, baby showers. So they're used to fielding a lot of questioning calls without there being any kind of commitment to you going there. So doing a simple call and saying, hey, do you have options for people that are dairy-free? That's something that they should be used to answering by now. Other things that you will want to keep in mind are what will the cost be per person. I usually tend to skew towards a base price of $35 or under for an afternoon tea, and this isn't including things like tax or tip. And this is so that way it is more financially accessible to members that may be on a limited income. There's a couple of different ways that you can pick your location, one of them being the more democratic approach where you can have a poll to see which is the most popular, or you can pick the one that would work best for you as the host, since you will be the one that has to deal with them the most. Now that you've narrowed down the where or the possible wheres that your tea party will be, the next thing you'll want to think about will be the when. If you have a restricted schedule, you might already have a specific date or a specific time that you know the meet will have to be at. And that makes it a lot easier and you can go on to the next step. If you're someone that has a little more flexibility, maybe there's a couple of dates that you would be able to make, or if you're someone with a looser schedule, you can either put it up to a popular vote or see if there are any dates that would work better for you. Another thing to keep in mind when you're picking your location is to check out the hours of availability. A lot of the local tea houses in my area tend to have earlier hours and end early afternoon. But bigger chains such as Prince Tea House may be able to provide you a wider range of times, making the meet more accessible. Once you've found out the possible locations and times for the meet, the next thing I like to do is I set up a Google form. And I set this up in a couple of ways. The first thing I do when I'm setting up my Google form is to make sure that the question layout makes sense and works for my purposes. So if I'm hosting a meet and there are several tea party locations that I can all make and all look good to me, what I'll do is I'll have a checkbox option. And this allows people to check off all of the locations that they would be able to meet, versus the standard multiple choice option, which would only allow people to select one location. When I'm adding these locations, typically I will add a link to their menus or their website, and I may even list out what the average price per person would be for the afternoon tea, along with if there was any options for dietary restrictions. The second question in my form is usually what days would work for you. And I specify this both in the day of the week, the month, and the date, because sometimes just doing the month-day format can get people a bit mixed up. And again, I have this on the checkbox mode. That way, if people have multiple dates of availability, it allows them to express that. The follow-up question to that would be what start time would work best for you. And when I do this, I tend to give at least a couple hours. But again, this is where knowing your locations will be helpful. Some locations have a time limit for how long you're allowed to be in that area. So it's important to be mindful of the tea house's hours of operation. That way you are a polite guest. My next question in this is a short answer, and it is, do you have any dietary restrictions, and if so, what? This lets me know if I need to narrow down what tea house location we go to based on those dietary restrictions. And the next question is one that you may want to think on if you are considering adding it, and that will be the addition of a +1. Will people be allowed to bring a +1, and is there any stipulation? Do they have to be wearing J fashion, or is it okay for anyone to bring their +1 if it's like a partner or someone that is driving to the event? This question I consider to be optional and based on what you want for your tea party. Another thing I like to add, and this will be either at the top or the bottom, will be the name. That way I know who was interested in coming to this meet and I can reach out to them if I have more questions. Now that I've set up my Google form, I release it into the community, and I typically give myself anywhere from a couple of days to about a week for responses. Any longer than that, and I tend to notice that responses really trickle down and you really won't get that many new responses, at least in my comm. So anywhere from 3 to 7 days is the sweet spot for me. Once I have my responses, I see what location won out, what time and what date worked out the best, if there are any dietary restrictions that I need to take into account, as well as the party size that was interested. But it's still not all there. So the next thing I do is I release a summation of the results. I will say, hey everyone, this is the location that won. I'll link to their menu, give a general idea of what kind of dietary options they provide, as well as the general cost per afternoon tea if that's applicable. I will then have the date, that is the day of the week, the month, and the actual date itself. And then after that, I will include whether or not there are any stipulations in +1s. Are +1s allowed? Do they have to be wearing J fashion or Lolita? That sort of thing. And then at the end of it, I specify if you would like to come to this meet, please respond here, and then that will be the RSVP. It's important to do a second round of RSVPs where you can actually see the people directly responding, because sometimes people will fill out the forms with the intent to go and maybe something changes, or the date and location that won out is not one they can make. This will give you an accurate head count, which is really important when you consider how to proceed to the next stage of the event. Typically, I let this be anywhere from 3 days to a week at most. And depending on how many people are interested, it really varies depending on what you do next. There are two options here, and it's important to do this 1 to 2 weeks before you think you will actually be going to this location. And that's important because, as I said earlier, these locations are really popular for other types of parties and celebrations. So you may not get your date or time if you wait too long to make the reservation and it gets too close to your date. But that may not be the case depending on your area. It's for my own comfort, I prefer to give at least 1.5 to 2 weeks notice to the location. So if it's under 10 people, I will call and set the reservation saying this is the amount of people that we will be having or that we would like to have. These are the dietary restrictions, if any. And once I get the confirmation, I send the confirmation out to the group that the location is booked, and these are the people that RSVP'd. Now, if there's any more than 10 people, say there's 15 or 20, that's where things can get a little more tricky, and you as a host may have to be a little more mindful. And you might even want to consider setting in a reservation fee. So the importance of a reservation fee is to not only cover yourself and the other members in the comm, but also out of respect for the location. Some places, if you have a party size over 10, may have a minimum that each person needs to spend, or they may preset the menu depending on how many people are going to be there. And if that's the case and someone drops out at the last minute, the most awkward thing in the world would be for there to be an extra charge that the person who was supposed to be there for is not there to pay. I've had this happen before, and it was very uncomfortable. And ever since then, I've been a lot more aware of whether or not there is a need for a reservation fee. Now, the way I determine my reservation fee is I figure out the base price per person multiplied by the tax, if applicable, plus a 20% tip per person. This covers you and that person. It secures their spot. And it also allows it to be stress-free for everyone that is joining, that there will be no additional bill that people were not expecting to have. This also enables people to really consider if they were committed to going to this event, as sometimes people plan to go, but something may happen. So as a quick recap, after I've figured out possible locations and time, I then make a Google form. I give it anywhere from 3 to 7 days, so maybe a week at most for responses. After I receive those responses, I summarize them for the group, and I get the final head count. And for that, at most, I give about 7 days. Once I have the final head count, I will then either call a location or book online, whatever is applicable, and confirm the date, the number of people, the start time, if there's any dietary restrictions, things of that nature. And if necessary for parties larger than 10, I will set up a reservation fee for spots, and that includes the price per person, plus tax if applicable, and 20% tip. Now, what can you do as an attendee to make this whole process go smoother? So as an attendee, I would recommend as soon as you get that confirmation for the date and the time and location, putting it in your calendar. That way, if you need to take time off from work, you can give the appropriate amount of notice. The next thing I would do is the day before, I would lay out everything I'm going to wear for my cord, or at least have it in a somewhat organized manner. That way, the morning of, in case an accessory or something breaks, I have the time to respond to that, and maybe I can go with a backup plan if necessary. I would also always plan to arrive early at this location. That way, if there's some kind of delays in traffic or transportation, or if something goes wrong with your wardrobe and you need to fix a piece or you need to change something out, you have that buffer. And that will allow you to fully enjoy the tea and everything it has to offer. I would also recommend bringing cash or possibly having a way to transfer money around, whether it be Venmo or Cash App, because some of these locations may or may not allow for the check to be divided up a certain number of ways depending on how many of you there are. I know in the past in MyCom, when there's a large number of us, we typically split up the bill in 3 cards and then we transfer money that way. That way it's only 3 transactions instead of, 20. And that makes it a lot easier on the restaurant side of things. So do you have any other tips or things that you would like to add for suggestions on planning meets or tea party specific meets? Is there anything as an attendee or a host that you think I've left out? Definitely let me know. And without further ado, I will do a cord rundown. So the cord I am wearing today includes the Country of Sweets Black OP from Angelic Pretty, as well as the matching KC. I've added 2 pink bows from Dreamholic, and I am also wearing a Dreamholic Hime Ringo wig. My favorite wig. I have it in 3 colors, and it adds a nice amount of volume without me having to worry about messing with my hair, so I really appreciate that. In addition to the matching KC, I also have the matching Boston bag that came with this set, and it has a nice big spacious interior as well as a pocket on the back. The fashion mask I am wearing is a Sanrio, Hello Kitty, and My Melody. They're just hanging out. It's pink, so I decided to wear it. I corded this OP with the 2022 Metamorphose round collar blouse with cape release but without the cape. And I love this blouse. It offers so much versatility with and without the cape. The legwear we have Roji Roji, and it is an old school style lace topping sock in pink. I will say I have these socks in a lot of different colors, and they make cording very easy whenever I want to introduce a different color, as I can just match it with whatever blouse I'm wearing and I feel ready to go. But the pink seems to be especially faint. In cool colors, it tends to look almost purple or maybe like a cool off-white. And that's all I have for you today, so you can find me on Tumblr and on Instagram at Royal Sealy. I also have a Twitter at Royal Sealies with an S, however I don't use it very much. So yeah, thank you for watching and have a nice day.